The advertisement model wears Carlton draft, featuring a regular bloke with beer spilt down the front of his shirt, taps into a long-standing trope about Australian masculinity and its relationship to dress. The ad appeals to the notion that real Australian men are happily free from feminine fussing about fashion and appearances. This idea stems back at least as far as the gold rushes in the mid-19th century, when it was not uncommon for sketch artists to represent rugged diggers in practical attire and pit them against new arrivals from the colonies who were exquisitely attired in the latest fashions from the old world. Now, everyone here knows that these images are mythic rather than documentary, right? But as an historian of late 19th century Australia, what frustrates me is that even though we all know that images like these grossly oversimplify reality, very few investigators have sought to complicate them. In contrast to Europe and North America, where there is now a small and vibrant body of work that investigates the historical relationship of men to dress, Australian researchers have actually exhibited, or Australian historians in particular, very little interest in detailed research on this topic. By and large, they've been content to leave sartorial concerns to museum curators and fashion specialists who publish little of their research. So my work is seeking to change this. Focusing on the mid to late 1800s, my work asks, what was really the extent of men's engagement with fashion and the significance of dress for their sensibilities and social identities in Australian history? My research is showing that the idea that only women and effeminate men were the ones that were interested in what they wore is a nonsense. And so is the idea that dress is not a suitable topic for suitable social historians. Using a combination of photographs, of biographical research and newspaper commentary, for example, my latest article takes us to a moment in the early 1870s when a share market was first emerging in New South Wales and the colony's first capitalist resources boom was briefly underway in mining towns. This moment coincided with the emergence of a modern business fashion which appealed especially to the sort of men that you can see in these photographs. So bank clerks, bank managers, the new breed of share brokers, and certain businessmen. It was a fashion that was characterised by lounge jackets with sort of wide curved lapels, double-breasted jacquard waistcoats, dripping ornamented watch chains, bowler hats, and white shirt fronts decorated with gleaming buttons or neckties. It was also a fashion that was characterised by an air of mannered informality that would become increasingly significant for the practice of white-collar masculinities in Australia in later decades. By tracking the emergence of this modern business fashion, my work not only explodes the myth that real colonial men were not interested in dress, it also suggests that the 1870s was a really important moment in the history of Australian consumerism, of capitalism, of modern masculinities, and of the rise of the so-called white-collar classes. In other research of mine, I've been interested in the dress of marginalised youth who used their clothing as a way to make a bid for group belonging and dignity in late colonial Australia. So using a combination of police gazettes, of prison mug shots, of extensive contemporary commentary and other photographs, I engage in informed speculation about the sources of where these youth sourced their clothing. So from female relatives, from second-hand clothing stalls, from clothing theft, and from purchases from the rising numbers of ready-made clothing stores in the late 19th century. So this research allows us to appreciate aspects of Australian social and cultural history, of urban and history and of material culture that you won't find in other published work in Australia at the time, nor indeed in international studies of marginalised youth in the day. My future research will explore more of the diversity of white-collar men's fashion and also of the dress and fashion choices of working class men in colonial Australia. I'll be interested in the way that certain Aboriginal men used dress to negotiate the lived realities of colonisation in this period, further discrediting the notion that men's clothing is a thin topic in Australian history. So in summary then, my research is currently establishing me as a much needed intermediary between fashion studies and social history in Australia. It's expanding our knowledge of Australian masculinities, and it's also using the neglected topic of men's clothing to offer new and deeper insights into aspects of Australia's past. Thanks.